So because again, I'm going to the Vancouver Playhouse where whichever artistic director, I'm also thinking of CanStage, of other theaters, where they don't actually have control of everything. That they're, Theatre New Brunswick, they don't have control, so they're like tenants in the main theater. So the artistic director and general manager do not have absolute control of the costs, whereas in your playpen, sorry, not to use a derogatory term, but Bill has control, can survive better. Am I extrapolating that?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think one of the reasons that the Playhouse, maybe not that that's the reason they closed, but certainly one of the things that annoyed the artistic directors you talk about that are there for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, is they didn't control the space. And if they wanted to extend the show, they couldn't, that was always a big problem, that they had to arrange with the city that was leasing. They had a specific dates that they leased year after year after year, and they had a certain right to those dates, obviously. But I remember when I worked there as a stage manager, there was this group called the Friends of Chamber Music. And the Friends of Chamber Music were the first group in Vancouver, when the theater opened, when the Playhouse opened as a theater, to rent space, even before the Playhouse Theatre Company was formed. Something like 6 months before the Playhouse Theatre started. And so they had right of first refusal of the dates, if you can imagine. And so the dates they picked were Tuesdays. So in the run of many of the shows, in the middle of the run on a Tuesday night, the Playhouse would have to strike their set so the Friends of Chamber Music could present whatever quartet or whatever group they were going to present. Well, you can imagine how annoying and aggravating and costly that would be. It was the Playhouse cost. The city didn't cover it because Friends of Chamber Music had the right of first refusal of the dates, even before the Playhouse Company. And they could not, well, when I was there, they couldn't deal with it, and it sounds like they never were able to deal with it. And I think every artistic director, Larry Little was the one who went the farthest. He actually had a plan, and he had a developer interested in building the theater for the Playhouse, which would have freed them up from this space that they basically didn't control.
So let's talk a bit about, because we're talking about the conversation between civic governments and artistic organizations, that in terms of the Arts Club, you have more freedom because you're in control of things, whereas the other theaters, they have civic partners, as it were, who are either leasing them the space or giving them grants or whatever. How do we have conversations with the civic partners to say, look, you have set up an unrealistic expectation to make whatever, Vancouver Playhouse or CanStage or whatever it is, to make it work? Who has that conversation with either, on city council or the mayor, saying, look, you got to be realistic if you want a theater like that? Can you do that?
And they had those conversations. My understanding is that every general manager or executive director at the Playhouse had those conversations and could not convince whoever that Friends of Chamber Music should, disappear or do Sunday nights when the Playhouse didn't perform. Because it was a theater that was available to the community, a community theater, a civic-owned theater. It had to be available for people to rent it. So even if they wanted to rent it on a Sunday night, the Playhouse would still have to strike their set. So to have that kind of conversation, which I'm sure every single general manager or every single artistic director would want to have that conversation, I don't think it obviously never went anywhere, because when Max Reimer took over from Glynis, that was one of his he was determined to end that arrangement. And basically, I think he said, if you want this theater, you've got to make changes. And unfortunately, it never happened.